Hey, how's it going?
Oh, hello, sir. Got your Dicey's pizza.
Hey, that's not a double Dicey's disaster.
Nope. That's the pizza you need.
What?
Just take a bite.
Hey, that's good. Hey, mister.
Yeah,
What's your name?
I'm just the messenger.
Pizza guy.
Yeah,
How do I get some more?
you got a kitchen in there, don't you?
What do you mean, make my own?
There you go.
How?
You got a TV in there, don't you?
42-inch.
We'll be in touch. Americans spend about $20 billion a year on pizza. And I would suggest that about, $19,999,000,000 of that actually goes towards placebo pizzas, palate-deadening discs who long ago sold their soul in the name of fast food. Which is kind of ironic when you consider the fact that time is one of the crucial ingredients of quality pizza. There you go, sweetheart. Now, why am I out evangelizing like this? Well, people need to know that great pizza starts in the home. And I'm not talking about with a phone call either. Now, what are the other key points to great pizza making? Well, you're just going to have to be patient. Right, pizza guy?
Uh-huh.
Let's see, we've only got a couple more stops to make. You know where Petunia Street is?
No.
Great, just sit tight. And you sit tight. This is Good Eats. Good Eats! Please repeat after me. Toppings do not great pizza make. Behold, the American pizza. More often than not, all these strata, raw vegetables, salty meats, insipid cheese foods, and innocuous sauce really only mask a deeper deficiency. It's right here. Crust, with all the flavor and texture of a mouse pad. Truth is, if you start with the right crust, it will take very few toppings to get you to pizza perfection. Of course, we have to define what that perfect crust is. Like a French baguette or a crusty Italian loaf, it's a symbiosis of crunchy and chewy. And that requires a dough that's, well, a lot like bubble gum. It's got to be plastic enough to expand, to accommodate ever-increasing volume of gas, and it's got to be elastic enough to actually hold that gas in. Open. Don't worry about the gas, we'll deal with that part later. What all this means is that we need a dough with a lot of that magical mesh called gluten. Now that can only come about from the meeting of water with the protein in wheat flour, and they have to be kneaded or agitated together. Now, the more protein your flour has, the more gluten can be produced. So it stands to reason that the perfect pizza dough only comes from high protein or hard flours. Now those are usually marketed as bread flour, but if you want to give your pizza that extra little something, reach for bread flours made specifically for bread machines. They've got more protein in them than anything else on the shelf. The dough begins with 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of salt, kosher, 1 tablespoon of pure olive oil. Follow that up with 3/4 of a cup of warm water, not cold, not hot, warm. Then comes the flour. 1 cup of bread flour measured by the scoop and sweep method. Then we have a teaspoon of instant yeast sprinkled right on top. Follow that up with 1 more cup of flour.
Have you gone completely inane? You must bloom the yeast in the warm sugar water before you add the flour.
Actually, Chef, that's instant yeast and requires no such pampering.
I tell you, one of these days I'm gonna...
Well, I guess he didn't care for my yeast inflection. Perhaps we should repair to the lab. Pizza dough gets its rise from the gas produced by billions and billions of unicellular fungi called yeast that chomp down on the sugar in flour-based doughs. Have a look. They are real pigs. And once their little feeding frenzy is over, that's right, yeast belch makes bread rise. Up until a couple of centuries ago, brewers made all the yeast. They'd scrape foam from the fermenting beer tanks, dry it, and sell it to bakers. In fact, of the 160 or so known strains of commercial yeast, the one used in bread making most often is Saccharomyces cerevisiae, beer sugar, and it comes in many guises. For instance, compressed or cake yeast, basically zillions and zillions of yeast that are wide awake and ready to go, compressed into blocks. Now, some bakers swear by this stuff, but I think it's more trouble than it's worth. You got to refrigerate it. It's got to be covered just right. It's like adopting an old goldfish. No matter what you do, it's going belly up in a week, so I skip it. Now, as my faux French faux pointed out, active dry yeasts, which are basically regular yeast dehydrated and broken into granules, are like sea monkeys. They must be resuscitated in warm water before they can eat and make gas. If the water goes over 140 degrees, you've got a microbial massacre on your hands. Now, most companies also offer a strain of turbocharged mutant yeasts bred for speed. I'm not a big fan of these rapid rise yeasts because, as we'll soon see, there's more to yeast than gas. Now, instant yeast is more like a hardy strain of active dry yeast that's been broken into very, very small granules and then packed with vitamin C, ascorbic acid, which really turns the yeasts on. What I like about this stuff is that it can be mixed directly with the dry ingredients. It doesn't have to be soaked or bloomed before using. That means it is extremely reliable and extremely user-friendly. Having never been much of a pouch man, I buy pound bags of yeast and then split it up so that I've got a small working supply here in the fridge and reinforcements and long-term airtight storage next door here. By the way, the expiration date on the bag will always be a year from the date of manufacture, but kept very cold and dry, you'll get 2 years out of it easy. Now, we mix.
If your mixer comes with a paddle attachment, now is the time to use it. It's the best tool for just bringing the dough together. Start it off on low so the flour doesn't fly up in your face like a bomb. Now, in the meantime, you want to lube up your hook, lady, bread hook that is, with a little non-stick spray. That's going to make sure that later on the dough will not climb out of the bowl. Now, when it looks like this, you are ready to change over to the hook. And once you've got that in place, we're going to go again on medium for 15 minutes. The hook is going to fold the dough and stretch the dough. And it's going to create little bitty air bubbles, which is great for the yeast because, well, you know the hardest part of blowing a bubble. Getting it started. You see, yeast can blow a lot of gas, but they can't start their own bubbles. They don't have the lung power for that. Oh, and by the way, kneading also gets gluten going. You see, while it's sitting there in the bowl, the flour proteins look something like this.
What they look like is dry, nested noodles. But wet them, and they loosen up and intermingle. Now, kneading is all about lining these proteins up so that they form an elastic, bungee-like mass.
This process, called development, takes time. That's why the 15 minutes on the machine. If you're doing it by hand, it's going to take twice as long, and that's not including rest periods. Now, what'll happen if you don't develop the dough enough? Well, it'll tear before you ever get it out to a pizza shape. If you overdevelop it, which is highly unlikely, the gluten will literally disintegrate, and you'll be left with kind of this soupy mess, which, trust me, isn't good for anything. So, how do you know when you've got it right? Well, tear yourself off a piece of dough and make yourself a Lilliputian pizza. Just work it back and forth between your hands, rotating it as you go. Think about what you do in your mouth with your tongue right before you blow a bubble. In fact, you could do this in your mouth because, like gum, wheat gluten is not water soluble, which is the reason that you've got to chew a lot before you can swallow a nice piece of pizza crust or a French baguette. Now, when it gets out to this point, hold it up to the light. Now that is what professional bakers call a window pane. It's like a membrane, the head on a drum. If it gets to the point to where it tears before this, well, guess what? You've got extra kneading to do.
Now, before this goes down, we need to work on the skin a little bit. And what I mean is that you want to have kind of one solid sheet of membrane covering it. And the way we get that is kind of fold it in on itself to draw the skin tight, and then give it a roll. And just kind of push it around on the table. You notice that I'm not moving my fingers. Why bother? Well, it's going to make it easier for the yeast to blow it full of gas, and it's going to make the dough a lot easier to work with later on down the line. There. Aw, it's cute. Okay, into a stainless steel or glass bowl. Just make sure that it's about 4 times bigger than the dough ball. Add to that a couple of teaspoons of olive oil. Toss to coat. and cover it with a piece of plastic wrap just to make sure that the ball doesn't dry out. Don't try to make a perfect seal. Then into the refrigerator. There.
Imbecile! The dough must rise in a warm place. Then you must punch it down.
Oh, you want punch? Punk? He's right, of course. Dough will rise faster in a warm place. After all, cold slows yeast metabolism, and that makes them eat slower and, of course, belch less. But this is one of those cases where faster is not better. In fact, an 18 to 24-hour rise will produce better flavor, and I'm pretty sure flavor is what food's all about. On top of that, it'll actually give the dough time to absorb some of those yeast belches we were talking about, and that will lead to a finer, more delicate structure. Now, I know there are times when you've just got to have pizza on the fly, and we're going to take care of that, just not yet. First, a stone floor. Prehistoric precedents aside, hot rock bakery is rock-solid science, especially if said rock can absorb and radiate high levels of heat without cracking under the strains of repeated heatings and coolings. Now, you could march down to Gourmets R Us and plop down $30 or $40 for a pizza stone, but a well-placed, unglazed quarry tile, 99 cents, from a building supply will do the job just fine. Now, since they're porous, tiles wick steam away from the dough, producing a crisp crust. Now, start this in a cold oven and then crank the heat as high as it'll go for half an hour before baking. Now, this is a 12-inch stone, and I don't make pizzas over 12 inches, so one does the job. I've got it stacked up on another simply so I've got good clearance from the door. Now, since I've got a flat bottom here, I just put it right on the floor. I leave it there 24/7 no matter what. If you've got a coil down here, just put your stone on the lowest rack. And believe me, you can leave it there all the time. "24 hours later, and our dough is only about 1.5 times its original size. But that's okay because it's not about gas, remember? Now, if we had left this to rise on the counter during that time, it would look something like...
Oh, Ken, I just love pizza. Well, golly, Barbie, have you seen my dough ball? It was here on the counter. Oh, yeah!
Okay, turn it out onto a clean counter. Don't bother doing this on a cutting board. It'll just get in the way. And use a knife or a dough scraper and bisect it like an amoeba on a blind date. There, now we've got 2 orbs. And basically, we want to get these reshaped to basically what it looked like before we cut it. So, turn the first side, dome side up like that, and then mash it gently with your hand just to get the really big air bubbles out. That's going to help to redistribute the yeast, redistribute their gases. There, now, to reshape, we're basically going to make it into a jellyfish again. Just fold it under itself like this, stretching that outer membrane a bit. And then I usually kind of make a collar with my fingers and just push. So you get a nice tight orb, okay? Set aside and repeat. Now there's one more step in this, but we've got to do something to the counter. It's a little too slippery right now because it's dry. So put just a little bit of water on your hands, just barely wet them, and rub it all over the countertop. That's going to create just enough surface tension to roll these out, okay? Just a little bit tacky now. So put it down, and again, we're going to roll, but without moving fingers. You see it starts to rotate, kind of like orbiting around the sun or something. And it'll tighten as it goes. There, tight as a drum. Again, you don't have to move your fingers. Now this guy right here, we are going to bake. So cover it up with a tea towel and let it rest for about half an hour. That'll give time for the gluten to relax, and that'll make it a lot easier to shape the pizza. And it'll give the yeast a little more time to do its voodoo. This guy, we're going to save for later, but we still have to roll it. So after tightening it up like that, I'm going to put that into a zip-top bag. I'm going to hit that with just a little bit of nonstick spray. Stand back. There. Zip it up and park it in the fridge. Now you can use this anytime for about the next 5 or 6 days. There. Now, while we're here, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine. If there's a secret to pizza making, it's building on a peel. Not only is this the only device capable of delivering your flavorful flat to and from the hot box, it doubles as a cutting board, a hors d'oeuvre transport, and if you're in a fraternity, well, whatever. Now, this is my favorite peel, Emma. All right, forget about it. Medium length handles, spacious work surface, and dirt cheap at your neighborhood restaurant supply house. Other necessary hardware? There isn't any. And a rolling pin would be useless because, as you can see by this cross section, the proper pizza lip is not rolled. Rolling pin would do this. This is only available through manual manipulation.
After giving Emma a light dusting, you're ready for step 1. Flatten your ball into a disc using the heel of your hand, turning as you go. Disregard any popping bubbles. Then step 2. Give it some lip by picking it up, pinching about an inch into the dough, and rotating. There, step 3. Stretching. I like to start by passing the dough back and forth while rotating it. That'll just kind of loosen up the dough. This is followed by gentle stretching. You want to use your knuckles for this, keeping your fingers out of the way. Then, the fun part, spinning.
Now, there are a lot of folks out there that think that the whole pizza spinning thing is just for show, but actually, it's physics at work. Centrifugal force, to be exact. You see, as the pizza spins, the heavier mass at the outer lip's trying to escape from the inner axis, and that stretches the dough evenly all across. Boy, I'm a nerd. You know, you don't have to do this helicopter business. You can do your stretching right down on the tabletop. Just take it and stretch it out by hand, being sure to turn it each time. Now, you're not going to get a perfectly round pizza this way, but you will get a paper-thin pizza, which can be a pretty darn good thing. Now, if you get your dough all laid out, and then you let it go, and it shrinks back in like that, then that means that it is more elastic than plastic, and you probably could have rested your dough a little bit more. But don't get frustrated. If you want it even bigger, just let it sit on the counter for maybe 5 minutes, and it'll loosen up. Okay, when you get your pizza the size that you want, I like this for a nice single serving, you want to give the peel a shake to just make sure that the pizza is loose, because there's nothing worse than getting your pizza all dressed up only to find that you can't get it off of the peel. This looks good. Now, we've got some choices. At this point, you could dress and bake and you'd have a very, very thin, crispy crunch. But if you let it lay here for about another half hour, it'll rise a little bit more and you'll have a slightly thicker, slightly chewier crust. Choice is yours. I start with olive oil, just around the rim. Not only is that going to add flavor, but it'll also help the crust to brown without burning. I'll tell you the truth. There have been plenty of nights that I've just slathered the whole thing in extra virgin olive oil, thrown on some kosher salt and some fresh cracked black pepper, and called it a day. But if you must use sauce, you couldn't do any better than our own sauce from Pantry Raid 2, Seeing Red. Now, the trick to sauce is to use as little as possible. I've only got about 1.5 ounces sitting here. Ladle it right into the middle and then swirl it out. Now, you can use bottled sauce. You could even use canned crushed tomatoes as long as you drain them thoroughly. But you see, I've barely got just a little layer on there. If you put a whole pool on there, believe me, you're going to have an ingredient slide and it will be ugly. Now, next up, herbage. I like thyme, fresh, oregano, fresh, and pepper flakes, red, dry. Now, why put these on top of the sauce and underneath the cheese? Because down here, they're not going to burn. Now, speaking of cheese, I like to go with 3 varieties, starting with mozzarella, the classic, and followed up by Jack and provolone. Why bother with 3? Well, the truth is once a cheese really heats up, it has a tendency to lose some of its character and flavor. So I find that giving it some contrasts and some kind of playmates to go with, it goes a little bit better. There. You can use anything that you like. Now, that in my book is pizza. Although occasionally I do add things like roasted garlic, sun-dried tomatoes, or maybe some asparagus spears, but not today. A blistering hot oven awaits. Jiggle just to get the lip out, go to the far edge, and then just layer out like that. T-minus 7 minutes and counting. Behold, golden brown, melted and delicious on top. Take a peek underneath, nice and brown there. So get your peel about halfway in, pull back, and just shuffle it right on. A 3-minute rest will ensure a clean cut. There. Now, granted, these are going to be 3 of the longest minutes in your life.
Oh, we'll use the time to review. Let's see. Use instant yeast because you'll have better success. Use bread flour because of the higher protein, chewier crust, which is nice. Let the dough rise long and slow in the refrigerator. Stretch it out, don't roll it. Dress it simply. Bake it hot and fast on Corey stones and let it rest for at least 3 minutes. Or oh, heck, that's been long enough. You know, this is definitely going to take a little longer than delivery from Dicey's. But you know what? I got to say, good eats is always worth it.